Welcome back to FilmFloggers. We review films and flog dead horses, so you don't have to. Is this week's film choice a complete waste of your viewing time? Much like flogging/beating dead horses, get it? Please head over to www.filmfloggers.com to check out all of our previous floggings. And while you're there, maybe hang out for a while, look around and vote for our next film. Click on vote, or visit www.filmfloggers.com/vote. Are you an idiot? If so, please check out our Idiot's Guide to Reviewing Us, where even a big dummy like you can leave us a red-hot review. Here at FilmFloggers, we pride ourselves on offering 1-star content with 5-star effort. Once on the website, please click on Idiot's Guide, or visit us at www.filmfloggers.com/review-us. That should have been Idiot's Guide. My fault, I didn't change the URL. Annoying. Once again, filmfloggers.com/review-us. Believe it or not, we now have a Patreon. I know what you're thinking. You have the audacity to ask us to pay to receive more of this. Pause for dramatic effect. Yes. We have a Patreon exclusive show called Nitpickers. I think you'll like it. Please visit www.filmfloggers.com/support-us. Again, that hyphen is annoying, should have removed it. Or head straight to our Patreon page. Patreon.com/filmwafflers. No idea why I did film wafflers. Another mistake. Where you can support us for as little as £1 British or $1.50. And while you're on the website, punch that big purple subscribe button and tell a friend about the vlog. Wife, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, mistress, your nan, granddad, your kids. They can tell their friends. They can tell their friends at school about the vlog. But in all seriousness, this really helps the podcast grow and enables us to enrich or ruin the lives of the hundreds of millions of earlobes we haven't reached yet. Happy Halloween, everyone.
There you go. It's better.
Oh,
yeah. Well, huge
raspberry or something.
Well, fucking talk about raspberries. Plenty of raspberry blowing in this. Seems to be a lot of people's go-to.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, that's true, actually.
Yeah. All right, okay.
The Hitcher does it, then that Franklin guy starts doing it.
Oh, yeah, everyone's doing it.
It's fucking terrible.
Yeah, okay, all right. Right, okay. Right, hello, Ben.
Yeah, morning, Tom. How you doing?
Morning, I'm good. We're talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974 original this morning. We've been umming, well, not umming and ahhing, but this has been continued to be sort of delayed.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know whether because this is, ultimately when we started out, we sort of were thinking, was this going to be a horror-focused podcast? And I think for both of us, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre original carried quite a lot of significance and weight. So I think there's an element of pressure wrapped up in this to do it justice. I very much enjoyed because it's not a film living by myself. It's a film that I try not to watch too often by myself because I suspect it could probably have some quite harmful effects long term. But I really enjoyed revisiting this, and it very much held up. Well, Ben, what do you think?
Well, I can see it. Yeah, I can see it in the background there. Yeah, I'm just having a look at it. It's just a fantastic poster. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Ben is referring to an original poster that he purchased for me off a website for my birthday, which I then got framed, and is now hanging on the wall at the foot of the bed, which can be quite an alarming sight for people who maybe for the masses of people who have seen the inside of my bedroom. But it's justifiable because it's a good poster, it's a vibrant poster, good colours, and it's a benchmark in horror cinema. I don't think that's a pretentious thing to say. I think it is very much a turning point. And, it's a significant film.
What's your history with Tobe Hooper? Have you got, apart from Texas and Poltergeist?
Poltergeist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there was a bit of hoo-ha around Poltergeist because apparently Spielberg actually directed Poltergeist.
Right.
Urban myth or whatever you want to call it. He couldn't officially say he was because he was also doing E.T. at the same time or something like that.
Right.
I think there was something in place where you couldn't direct two films at the same time or whatever.
Well, I think you almost have a contract, don't you, with whatever production company is doing the film, yeah.
But there was a lot of stuff with that because he had an active part. He was a producer, but people were saying that he was actually directing it whilst he was on set.
So what the hell was Tobe Hooper doing? Just sort of letting Steven Spielberg take the reins?
Just doing what Steven told him to do.
Oh, dear. Oh, must be
good. Some people say this. A lot of people say it's not true. It's a load of bollocks. So.
Well, I didn't realise. I mean, I watched a documentary about Texas, actually, in the run-up to this. And they were talking about how Tobe Hooper, at the point of doing, I was under the impression that he just graduated from this Austin Film School, that he'd done some shorts as a student, and he he generated quite a lot of interest. He obviously had something, this guy. But I didn't realise that he'd already done a feature film by the time this came out. He'd done some feature, which I had absolutely Did you know about this?
No, I don't think so. No, I'm not really sure of his work pre-Texas, to be honest.
Well, hang on, because supposedly this is what gave quite a lot of people confidence in this production, that he'd already got a feature under his belt, and most of the people in it were like, well, I mean, that's infinitely better than what we've seen before. So how old was he when he did this?
Was it horror?
I don't know. So 1943 he was born. So how old was he in? So he was, all right. So he was 31, right? So So this is it. He'd done Eggshells 5 years prior. So in his sort of mid-20s, a film called Eggshells, which was it's about sort of hippies and just some craziness in Texas, with the hippies. So I've got no idea what that film's like, but
he's a fan of Texas, right?
Yeah, he's a fan of Texas and the hippie movement.
Sorry, the video was just exploding there. Sorry, you were in slow motion. I think it's fixed itself now.
Okay, good. All right. Well. Anyway, so Eggshells is what he was doing before this. So he found his feet, we could say, interested in the hippies, young people. Will very much carry this over. But I think, as I understand it, what he wanted to do with this was he wanted to make a film that would get him into Hollywood, and he reckoned the best vehicle to do that was through a horror film. And so then he basically wrote the screenplay alongside his co-writer of Texas Chainsaw. And then there was a lot of umming and ahhing about the name. And they just initially, I think the number of working titles this thing had, there was headcheese at one point. There was just Leatherface. There was a series of other, really quite sort of lame names. And then Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they were like, yeah, this one's going to hit.
Maybe headcheese is the next one in the... Because there's how many Texas films has there been now? 7, 8. So maybe headcheese is the next name.
Probably.
Because there has been now a Leatherface.
There has been a Leatherface, yeah.
That's been, the last sort of 5-6 years that's come out. Yeah. What have you... I've obviously seen this one. I've seen the second one a long time ago. I know the sequel to this, again, was Tobe Hooper, and I know it was a little bit more comedic. It was a bit more silly. A bit of Dennis Hopper floating around the place. And after that, I know there's one with Matthew McConaughey in.
Oh yeah. Let me take you around the on the tour.
Oh, you've got it right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, just about. So I think we've got Texas Chainsaw. We've got Texas Chainsaw 2, which is Tobe Hooper. Apparently, the treatment of that was very much like an Alien 3 treatment, where basically the finished film was just absolutely butchered by the studio that made it, where they basically just took on the footage and were like, okay, we don't give a shit about what your creative vision is, and the film you see now is very much a studio butchered version that everyone basically hangs their head in shame about.
All right. So the studio made the decision to turn it into a bit more of a...
No, I think it was...
Not comedy, is it?
It was due to be kind of more comic and a bit silly, but the way it was finally cut, apparently a lot of the stuff wasn't finished whenever the production was ended, and it was all just a bit of a shit show. Then there was number 3, which had Viggo Mortensen in, I think. I think he was in that. I think that was quite a nasty fit, a bit more of a kind of quite a gruesome film, but I never actually watched it. But again, it was another sort of studio butcher job. And then you had The Next Generation, which was old, McConaughey and...
Renee Zellweger?
Renee Zellweger was in there. And then after that, what do you have? I think that was then you had the 2003 remake with Jessica Biel and...
I think the remake's okay.
It's fine, yeah.
I think it's decent, yeah.
It is.
Some decent stuff in.
It is. I'd say it's not bad. I mean, I wouldn't say it's not Hills of Eyes 2006, Alexandra Aja remake, but it's not bad.
Yeah, I think that remake actually improves on the original.
Yeah.
I think the Texas remake doesn't. It's not obviously better than the original, but it's got some good stuff in its own right. And I think the changes they make to that film
are valid.
I think make sense. I don't think they're jarring. I like the fact that he starts wearing the boyfriend's face. I like that bit. It's pretty good. Enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's good. So so that's 2003, and then I think we had The Next Generation. Was it The Beginning? Texas Chainsaw The Beginning in 2006.
Yeah, this is where it gets really muddled for me. Yeah, because I know we had some Texas 3D.
So I think that was Leatherface. I feel like that was Leatherface, wasn't it?
Oh, was it? I thought it was literally just called Texas Chainsaw 3D. Because it was really sold as being in 3D.
For some reason, I've decided to do this without notes, so without a sort of guide. So I'm just going to pull up. Right, here we go. Okay, I've got it here. So yeah, no, you're right. So it's yeah. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. Okay, which I think was it was rancid. It sucked. It wasn't as bad as some of them, but
that was a prequel. I'm assuming.
It was a prequel, yeah. And it was quite, it was a lot more gruesome than the Texas Chainsaw 2003 film. You know, there was some quite sort of graphic moments in it.
I think the remake of this original, I think it's also good because the whole point of this film is that there isn't a great deal of gore. So it keeps the gore to the right amount, which is good.
It does. Yeah, it had Texas Chainsaw 3D, and then we had Leatherface, which I think was by the guys who did, which I think Leatherface was another prequel. Texas Chainsaw 3D was a prequel of sorts, wasn't it? And then Leatherface, who cares? But I think Leatherface was by the same guy who did Inside, that French film.
Oh, right.
I'm pretty sure that's right.
It's one of those things, isn't it? It's similar to me and Fiona just did Saw recently. If you had ample amount of time, you just watch them all, wouldn't you? And you just talk about them. Because it's just like, it's a famous series. Probably get a bit of a laugh out of watching some of the lesser known ones and some of the ones that are just, there's a lot of junk there to look at.
Oh, yeah. Crazy junk.
I just don't think there's ever going to be a time where we're going to be able to justify watching all of the Texas films, to be honest. But
yeah, I don't think that.
Maybe when we go full time, who knows?
Yeah, and we'll quite. But no, I mean, the point is with this film, Texas Chainsaw, returning back to the 70s here, like you say, there is no blood, and very little blood. I think there was there's the famous thing of whenever it was brought out in the UK and they tried to, they banned it for a while. They couldn't find, whenever these censors, the BBFC or whatever it is, were looking at it going, okay, we're going to ban this, and for what reasons? Is there anything that we can trim out of this film to then get it through the censors? And these censors were like, we can't pinpoint one particular scene to remove that will make this acceptable. They just found the whole, like, the relentlessness of the terror and the dread was kind of so overbearing that whenever it came out, because people had never seen anything like this, it would just completely blow people out and people would just be in an absolute state. So they were like, we just can't, it's just too relentless. We can't pinpoint what it is.
It's unreleasable in its current state.
It's just unrelenting. It just doesn't stop. That
goes into the idea in the 70s in horror films, how they become a lot more realistic. Now, I don't mean that in the sense that there's like loads of Leatherfaces running around the place.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no fantasy.
No.
All this stuff is happening in the real world. They're not like aliens. There's no monsters. There's no people, there's no sea fucking people. It's just people that are existing in the universe, in the world, with just like nasty people. Just horrible things, which on the face of it seem to be human beings, but they're obviously completely deranged.
Yes.
Halloween is obviously a little bit silly because he gets shot and he just walks it off. But the idea of someone coming into your house and attacking young kids and like a home invasion type thing, it's realistic.
Yeah, it is.
So I think the 70s was a turning point with that. Everything became a bit more realistic. So based on that, it's harder to justify, isn't it? Because it's like, oh man, this is too real, this.
Yeah, it's close to the bone. And as well, I mean, with Halloween, for example, that was a bit later as well, wasn't it? But still probably quite significant at the time. Because of the Loomis character who spends, he doesn't spend as much time in the first one as he does in the sequels, walking around talking about evil on two legs. But, because of that backstory, he almost paints Michael as being this kind of superhuman evil being. Whereas with this, there is absolutely no backstory to these characters other than they're living out in Texas in just a sort of barren wasteland. It's hot, it's unrelenting landscape, and this family of maniacs, cannibalistic maniacs, for absolutely no reason that's explained, are effectively just murdering people who are unfortunate enough to stumble on their ranch or whatever. But they said that it was this is a significant changeover from the horror films that had gone previously, where it was a woman in a bloody rubber suit coming out the sea. I
like those ones.
There was a last house on the left, which was
Hills of Eyes, of course, was 70.
Was it? Yeah, but wasn't last house on the left? I mean, was that early 70s or was that even 60s potentially?
No, Last House on the Left was 72.
Right. They always hold that against this as being that was really the first one. I mean, that was banned as well, where it was a horror film. It was branded a horror film, but there was no supernatural element to it whatsoever, apart from just these people who were hell bent on just causing rape and mayhem.
The Wicker Man. You could say The Exorcist, I suppose. But apparently people are being possessed by demons apparently in the world. So I think that was more of the fact that it was a young girl.
Young girl, yeah.
With a crucifix, blowing out with that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was like, oh man, this is
we're changing over here.
Yeah, we've not seen this kind of stuff before.
Well, there's just loads. I mean, there's, you know, the 70s is peppered with films that you just look back on still and go, you know, yeah, that is a turning point. And because because they've got nothing to compete with, because they are very much setting their own trend, they're very much exploring their individual themes. Things by and large are generally understated, which makes them a lot more effective. And they're covering, and because it all is pinning back to humans and you know, the human experience in these extreme situations, that they're just interesting films. You know, The Exorcist is an interesting film. Yeah, there's a supernatural possession element, but there's also at the heart of it, you've got this the father. Oh, I can't remember what he's called now, but the main, not the exorcist, but this priest who brings in the help of the exorcist eventually, and how he's a priest and he's struggling with his faith, and his mother's in this mental asylum, and there's just this sense of all this evil closing in around him. But at the heart of it, you've just got this guy, and it's the human side, and it's the same with this. You know, it's very much centered around the character's reactions to being thrust into this extreme situation.
Yeah, well, it sets up the world, doesn't it, with the characters, and they go around, they meet the locals and stuff. From us, the viewer, looking at this family, the Sawyers, and going like, well, this is completely deranged. Like, oh my God, it's a family full of cannibals. This is insane. In some ways, the setting that they're in, and the fact that in some ways they're just a product of their environment. So not a case where they've chosen to be insane and the cannibals, and they're in actually this nice idyllic setting and everything's going great. They've just chosen, or they just are insane. There's all this stuff with like industrial capitalism about the slaughterhouse and them losing their job and tough times.
Well, he even brings it up. The hitchhiker brings it up, doesn't he?
Well, exactly, yeah. And it's foreshadowing, isn't it? It's foreshadowing this idea of this slaughterhouse and them talking about, I had this job and it was, it was great, but now it's gone. Technology took over, rendered my job obsolete. And this whole idea that talking about slaughterhouses and you get the subliminal messages of like the cows, and you're like, oh God, are you going to see some cows being slaughtered there? You don't. And then the idea that the kids themselves end up in a quote unquote slaughterhouse, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it all feels quite relevant.
The thing with this, it's probably that's how it's been shot, but it's very gritty, it's very nasty, it's very grainy. I won't get too much into the whole 16mm stuff, but
yeah,
you don't know how much of this stuff's been done because of budget restraints and how much stuff's just been Tobe's just chosen to do. With the gore, with how it's shot, set design, all that kind of stuff. It's probably a mixture of both, I suppose. I suppose the fact that they couldn't afford loads of fancy dancy stuff, and that adds to it. And I think that's probably a reason why sequels and other films have tried to replicate elements of this film. And it's just not worked, because throwing another 15, 20, 30 million at it's not the point. This needed to be done on like a shoestring budget. It works that well. It works well because of that, because of the lack of money.
Well, yeah, I mean, case in point is that final scene in the at the dinner table, the dinner scene, where I think they had the cook was on was his contract basically expired at the end of, from the moment they started shooting that scene, 24 hours from that point, this cook, his contract was going to expire, and they had no way to renew, etc. And so they basically just had to sit there and get that scene shot in that 24-hour stint. And supposedly it was an absolute horror show, because this house, they were shooting this in the August Texas summer, and it was 40 degrees. They'd boarded up all the windows of this house to basically stop the light coming in, so it would look like it was nighttime. And there was a whole set of them, and there were all these like dead animals and all these various props that the set designer had made that started going off in all the heat and all the light. And people by the end of it were absolutely beside themselves. So, I mean, you've got Sally screaming hysterically, and you've got these other family members sort of like mimicking the screams just in this kind of like maniac fashion. And I think by the time they actually got the shots they needed, folk were absolutely beside themselves. And you can see the exhaustion on people's faces, and like the sweating is all real. You haven't got some blokes, scubaing in with a bloody spray can, spraying people's faces off. It's genuinely that they are.
Well, you find that, don't you? A lot of times where actors, I think Al Pacino was, I can't remember what film it was, but he was saying about how he had to do a certain take like 50, 60, 70 times, and on the 70th time, that's the take they used, because that's what he needed. I can't remember what film it was, but that's what the director was looking for.
Well, it's like The Shining, isn't it, as well?
Oh, The Shining as well, of course. Yeah, well, Kubrick was just
Stanley was just driving that Wendy woman completely around the bend.
Oh yeah, well yeah, her hair was falling out. She was having a complete disaster. Yeah. The guy who plays
Jack Torrance,
the caretaker No, so not the caretaker, the cook. The cook who leaves. Apparently
okay.
there was scenes where he had to do it like 150 times.
But I mean, he doesn't even really do that many I
know. Yeah. He's like, you just got to do that again. And he was just obviously naturally just losing his mind.
Oh God, yeah. That's horrendous. Yeah. But you know, I think but all of that comes out of, particularly in this film, that came out of just the budgetary constraints and the fact that, you know, they ended up doing this on about 60,000. I mean, it's mad. I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, you need to
60,000.
Yeah, $60,000. But obviously, you know, you need to gross it up. I mean, that's not 60,000. It's not that today. I don't know what.
Well, I know. I didn't think it was that small. I thought it was a bit more than that.
Oh, it's small. It's a small budget.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, maybe like 60 to 80. It's bugger all.
What do you think? Characters? What do you want to get into here?
I mean, the characters. I mean, I don't know whether.
Well, the characters aren't that interesting, are they?
They're not that interesting.
I don't really find them that annoying as such. They're just there to serve the narrative of the film. And with some other horror films, the characters in horror films are outright just irritating. Bar Franklin. And I think the only reason I actually even remember some of the people's names is because you just get Franklin like screaming them half the time. Sally!
Yeah.
Sally! That's all you're getting from Franklin. It's just him screaming after Sally. You buy what they're doing because you don't know what's going on. You haven't got a fucking clue what's happening.
Yeah.
So when they start walking towards that house and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm sure something bad's going to happen. It is a horror film. I've seen the poster. Like, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
They're not conventional horror film like dummies where they do stuff and you're like, oh, man, why are you doing that? What are you doing? What kind of decision is that? Yes, they go into the house, but it's also the time as well as it's the 70s. And
it's true.
They pick up the hitchhiker, so it's a bit more loose. And of course, like, you can't expect what's about to happen in that house. So I think, you know, knocking people's doors and going, hey, you know, can you help us out? I don't think that's that far away from, you know, the norm.
I agree.
Especially back then. And just when I think, is it Kirk who first goes in?
Yeah, correct.
And then the pigs go in as well. But then you see this like, well, you don't know what it is. You see this figure scooch across the screen. You're like, oh man, what's that? Where's that come from? Mallet's old Kirk. He's squirming, blowing out.
Yeah.
Your brain's trying to compute what's going on. And then before you know it, it's over because he brings Kirk in and he just slides the door shut.
Slams the door.
Yeah. And that music kicks in. And you're like, okay.
Do you not think whenever you first see Leatherface, which, like you say, is a very brief moment, but, you know, he appears and he like towers over him. And the way it's filmed, and obviously because I think he's standing in front of like a rack of, you know, animal skulls and like a big sort of red. The whole thing is this. I mean, it's very much set up to just look very, very much like a sort of slaughterhouse.
Well, yeah, I guess anything you'd say with that is it doesn't look that inviting. If I pop my head through the door and went, hello, and you look to that and you hear this pig go and you'd be like, oh, maybe I'll go to the next house.
Yeah, you wouldn't touch it. But the way it's filmed, like he towers over him, like he just looks like this absolute massive blob, basically, with this sort of...
Well, he looks like a monster, doesn't he?
He looks like a monster. And he raises the mallet. And then obviously Kirk starts, you know, spasming out on the floor. You know, it's all pretty raw. You know, this is back in the like early 70s. And it's pretty... I mean, it's not directly explicit. You know, you don't see a sort of head wound in great detail, but you see his body twitching and the blood that's spurted down his abdomen. And then he's pulled into the slaughter room. And Leatherface then just slams the metal sliding door shut.
That's when that music kicks in as well. Up to that point, there's nothing's going on other than the actual sounds of the mallet hitting and Kirk, you know, spasming on the floor.
It's final. That's it. I mean, it's you know, it's so well done. You know, there's no dicking about. They're not sending Kirk up the bloody stairs, you know, to investigate. You know, Leatherface coming out the shower. They are interested in literally, you know, the guy goes in, Leatherface twats him and just drags him in like a bloody ragdoll.
Yeah, well, it's not play for jump scares, hence why they keep the music bit at the end. Because you could have had it, when he comes onto the screen, you're like, oh God, you know, you could have had this explosion of music. Oh God, jump scare. But no, he goes about his business, Mallet's old Kirk, and then he slides the door, and you're like, oh God, you know, what the fuck's going on in there? Then you get that explosion of music, that sound effect. There is similarities to Psycho in many ways, with how it's cut and how the use of sound.
And the house as well, being like sort of character and all.
Yeah, how they frame certain shots. You can tell there's obviously a lot of similarities with Psycho. You know, another film that we've done. You know, we've done a bit of Psycho.
We have done.
Very good.
Can we just bring it back to I feel like we need to talk about the hitchhiker scene, because that's pretty pivotal. And it comes after, I think there's been enough sort of subliminal imagery and setting up to sort of create the to create this atmosphere of, slaughter and just unrelenting heat and kind of madness, I guess, because, it opens up and it opens up to the sound of someone digging and like labouring in a graveyard, and then it cuts and there's like a memorial where someone's dug up a grave and has stuck two bodies together and it's just sitting like sweating. I mean, it's actually, I didn't realise, but the bodies are actually, the camera starts very close up to the bodies and then pans out, and like the bodies are actually dripping.
Well, I should ask, how's the Steelbook edition looking there? Is it looking good?
It's nice. So I've got this 3-disc edition that I got back, I think when I was pretty much 18. I went into HMV and I bought, prepare yourself for this. I went in and the two purchases I made were Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3-disc, Steelbook, and Michael. I think it's German about a bloke who keeps a little boy in his basement. God only knows why I decided to buy that on DVD. But I took that to, I mean, the cover of Michael as well is literally a bloke leading a little boy through the park. I mean, it's almost so deranged that it's like a black comedy because it's just so disgusting. And I took that to the checkout, and obviously, God knows what that person was thinking at that checkout.
Well, yeah, calling the police, yeah.
Calling the police, going like, we've got, we could put this guy on a watch list.
We've got a maniac on our hands.
He's just bought Texas Chainsaw 3-disc, and he's just bought a film about, paedophilia. What are we doing?
Well, lucky she didn't ask you any questions. You could have just played into it and gone, oh yeah, okay, interesting choice. Yeah, just a cheeky double bill on a Tuesday afternoon. No big deal. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. No, it's grim. It was a pretty heavy purchase, but yeah, I've got this 3-disc, and it's been with me a lot. I had it at university. I've had it all the time when I've been, working, and so it was a delight to pop it in the old the DVD player. But it's not a Blu-ray, so it's not a remastered super duper whatever.
Well, yeah, I can imagine you can get a very nice 4K edition of this.
Yeah, but you don't want it. You don't want it.
Well, no, because then you may...
Yeah, you lose some of the roughness.
Yeah, or things like, showing up because it's in 4K and you go like, oh, yeah, that set design looks a bit silly now.
I don't think we want that. I think you want a cruddy copy. You want a VHS copy with, bogies and, blast off all over it. You want
a VHS copy, exactly. Yeah, where there's like flickering and like some scenes blow out, yeah.
Yeah, and someone's, coughed all over the back cover,
The whole film it's like art housey, isn't it? That vibe of just like grittiness and dirtiness and just, it's like flickering a little bit and grimy.
It's minging. You want it to be minging.
Oh, yeah.
But no, so the DVD, I mean, it still has that griminess, but it's just obviously got, so much exciting special material that, you won't have access to.
The opening crawl, so it plays off as this, it's based on a true story. So I guess that's reasonably effective. And I know this, and I think, probably more Psycho as well, were inspired by Ed Gein and the serial killer, and I think he was digging up a lot of people, and I don't think he killed loads of people, but he killed some people, so he's still not very good. But he was going to cemeteries and digging up people, and he was making, fucking bags out of people's tits and stuff, and
you've got it.
He was really going for it.
You've got it.
A bit of a tit bag for the Toms.
Oh, you've got to have a tit bag.
Yeah, tit bag.
It's an absolute, it's an essential. It's an essential accessory. I mean, you won't see me out on a night without a tit bag.
No. Polo and a tit bag.
Yeah. You've got, a tit backpack, personally, for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, sorry.
So, yeah, so you got the Ed Gein stuff, which is kind of interesting. So I guess having the based on a true story is, I don't know if this is the first time that sort of concept has been used before in a film. And for this, you're like, well, yeah, maybe. Is it? Similar to what happened, 25 years later with the Blair Witch Project. I think the reason that was so effective, that film, was because for a good chunk of time, people were like, oh man, is this real? Oh God. It's set up to give you a good understanding of what you're about to watch.
Yeah. Without giving too much actual detail.
I think it links in with the time period as well. And because this recording, as we said, got delayed, I looked at a few bits, and I'm not going to go down rabbit holes because there are plenty for this film. Reviews, and there's all sorts of like books and articles and fucking scholarly fucking analysis of all sorts of stuff. But it's the 70s. I think it was the idea. I think Tobe Hooper said about the government in America at the time and how they were deceiving their citizens, and you had the Watergate scandal. Again, in and around this time, for a lot of these films, most of the time there's something political going on the back of Vietnam as well. So there's all that stuff going on, you see. Well,
yeah, you've got it, yeah. So what you're saying is Tobe Hooper was deceiving the audience much like the government was deceiving the people?
I think that was the message, yes.
Right.
Yes, I think that's what he was trying to do.
Or he's just trying to set his movie up. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Maybe some of these people just do it. It's like an afterthought. We spoke about this before, about like, messages that maybe aren't there. I think maybe in this case, it probably is there. Some directors and some writers, they just go, oh, was it this? Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, of course it was. Yeah.
Oh, well, they'll just send a lot of these like annoying critics around the houses. They'll just feed them all sorts of bullshit and just laugh about some of the crap that they managed to sort of like spin out from it.
Oh, yeah. I'm assuming that you were meaning this, Toby, when you were making the film.
Yeah,
maybe not. Ooh,
yeah, touch the nose.
Clever, yeah, very clever.
Very nice.
Right, sorry. So the slaughterhouse, the hitchhiker. Was there anything you wanted to say about him in particular?
Well,
Apart from he's just doing a good job.
Other than that, he is utterly unhinged. I mean, that this guy is. I mean, he really is a sort of the definition of a nightmare. He in the same way, but it's not. It's not the same as a Norman Bates, but because he's a lot more unhinged than Norman Bates and a lot less cunning than Norman Bates. But there are a few moments when he's sitting in that van where his face just changes. He goes from there's this explosive kind of energy that whenever he's talking about the slaughterhouse and he's talking about the killing of animals and the way they do it and how the gun's no good and it's all about the sledge that was the best way to kill the animals. And there's so much kind of energy behind what he's saying. You can see it in his face, and he's like jittering around when he's talking about it.
Oh, he's getting excited, isn't he? He's getting giddy.
He's getting giddy, and then
he loves it.
And then like he sees Franklin's knife that he then uses to cut his hand. I mean, it's just a series of just absolute horrors. I mean, and the kids are all sitting at the other end of the van just watching this guy perform. And he goes from doing that, then he gets his bloody camera out, starts taking pictures of people, and then goes like, you can pay me, it's a nice picture, you can pay me now. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to pay you, like, it's not turned out so good.
This guy needs to get out of this van.
And his face is just like drops. And he's like, oh Christ, what's next? So then he gets his bloody phosphorus or whatever the hell he's got in that little, well, he's got a little bag, he's got, I mean, he's got a bloody tip, I don't think it's a tip bag.
He's got a tip bag, yeah.
He's got a bloody tip bag around his neck. And, he pulls out some bloody phosphorus from that, as you do, and just starts burning up that picture.
Well, it's an essential item for the tip bag.
Yeah.
You don't leave the house without it.
No, you've got to have something to basically like blow up photographs that people don't want to pay for. It's a completely unhinged episode, but they completely get themselves into it because whenever they pick this guy up, I mean, he's standing at the side of the road, and when he's running towards the van, like his arms are flailing around all over the place. Like you wouldn't touch him with a bloody 10-foot pole.
I think some of the people in the van go, I'm not too sure about this.
But this guy looks
got Franklin there going
deranged.
like, get him in. Franklin's obviously obsessed with the whole morbid side of this whole slaughterhouse thing, so he just keeps talking about it. And I don't really know what they're doing anyway. Like, what are they doing? They go to an old house where some of them used to live or something. Is that what they're doing?
So this is it. So the house that they visit is supposedly because Franklin and Sally are brother and sister, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they go to see their father's house.
Right.
That's where they grew up, supposedly.
Okay.
But I don't quite know then how that translates to like whenever they left, what the Leatherface clan then came and killed the father, and I don't know.
Yeah, I'm assuming Leather and Co have got nothing to do with it. They just so happen that their house is just down the road.
It'll probably be the grandparents' house or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Oh, yeah, I think it is the grandparents. Yeah,
that'll be right. Right. I don't know, but it's good. I mean, yeah, the hitchhiker scene.
As I said with that scene, it's foreshadowing, but you're still sitting there going, "Oh, well, it doesn't in any way prepare you for what you're about to witness."
No, it's disorientating. You think, Christ, what on earth was that?
It's pretty heavy, and you're like, "Oh God, like what's that?" That guy's going to come back at some point.
Yeah,
you may see him again.
Oh, we're going to see him again. Yeah,
and I think that's why this film's so good, because other horror films before and after, if you're doing that much, if you're setting up to that degree, you probably won't be that shocked because you're just waiting for it. You're like, okay, right, yeah, we've had this meeting with this, God knows, this like deranged guy. Okay, what's next? I'm not quite sure, but something's going to happen.
Well, and as well, you're going to get some grotesque backstory by the end. You're going to get a flashback to when this guy was growing up, and it's going to explain why he is the way he is, and actually the twist is he's a long lost brother of you, or just some absolute baloney like that.
Well, that's what that dinner scene would have been at the end, wouldn't it? That dinner scene would have just been a big exposition dump of just like, this is why we're doing it to you. We're going to eat you, but because of this. Don't hear it.
Yeah, because, I had this scar on my face and, your parents just didn't want to accept me as a son. And, Oh, man, we've lost it. We've completely lost the plot, guys.
It's just the idea of Leatherface sitting at the end with the makeup mask on. He's become this housewife.
He's like a sort of transvestite.
And he's just sitting there going like, oh, man, what the fuck is going on?
Oh, it's insane.
What's going on?
It's insane. And as well, just sorry, to jump forward again to that dinner scene, apparently one of the other things that culminated in creating such a grotesquely oppressive atmosphere in this sweat box that it turned into was that Gunnar Hansen, apparently, they only had one suit for him. They only had one costume for him. And they couldn't wash it because they thought, Christ, if we wash it and the colour runs out and he ends up, walking around with a bloody grey blazer, how are we going to pull that back? We haven't got a spec. So he had to wear that same, it took 30 days to film it. And for every day of shooting, he was wearing that. So by the end, he absolutely hummed because he's a big guy anyway. And the stench was just, incredible. So apparently people were just gagging. People were just throwing up at the combination of Gunnar Hansen's BO and like all these animal parts that were just burning in the heat.
This is what you got to do to make these kind of films. I think the actors and the people involved have got to suffer.
Have got to be throwing up.
They've got to get as close to what's actually going on screen as possible without people actually being sawn up by some chainsaw-wielding maniac. They've got to get close to potentially eating meat, human flesh. They've got to blur the lines.
Yeah, they do.
To create something where you're like, God, this is pretty authentic. This is pretty smart.
Yeah, these people look genuinely like they look hysterical. I mean, that's it. I mean, by the end, that Sally character, whenever she goes into the back of that van and starts doing that sort of like maniac laugh when she's leaving, she looks completely unhinged. And it's because they've just been driven to absolute distraction during the shoot.
She's escaped, but she's not, has she? She may as well have not escaped.
Yeah.
Because she's finished.
Yeah, she's finished.
She's absolutely finished. You're done.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about it, and it's it's a short film. It's an hour 20 odd, but it is an hour 20 odd of just pure madness manifest in front of you.
I think the first maybe half hour is reasonably slow, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm not sitting there going, "Oh, can we just get to Leatherface already?" Christ, for a film that's reasonably short, the first chunk of the film, other than the hitchhiker stuff, not a great deal's going on. They're just sort of poodling around the town. Pick up the hitchhiker, they start running around that abandoned house, just laughing, giggling.
But the first half hour, like you say, it foreshadows the rest, and it sets up the landscape and the heat as almost a separate character in the film. You get that sense, you get the images of all the cows lining up and the flat landscape, the soaring sun, and it just creates this perfect environment for this kind of thing to unfold. And then, there's that scene where they go to see the grandparents' graves and there's that drunk. There's all these people sort of sitting around and most of them sort of look completely half-baked. And there's that drunk sort of lying in the grass and he's like talking a load of babble about, I've seen things around here and he's completely off his face. But it's all just creating this sort of feeling of madness, people going off in the heat, and... Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Leatherface stuff, it's slow, but it does very much set up the perfect environment for this kind of thing to take place. But do you want to go to what should we maybe go?
I wanted to touch upon, which I think is one of the best scenes after. So he takes Kirk, he starts sawing him up. Again, you don't see any blood or anything like that. She's been hooked. I think it's Pam. She's been put on the hook, so she's watching proceedings. She then gets put in the freezer, and then the other guy comes in to look for them. Yeah, he comes in. There's the bit where he gets Jerry. He then just shoves Pam back in the freezer with a hand, just a hand to the face.
Oh yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
And then it's the bit where he goes to the window and he starts opening the curtains and he's like, he's obviously completely blowing out. It's like Piccadilly Circus in here. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Where are all these fucking people coming from?
Where are all these people coming from all of a sudden? I haven't seen anyone other than the old cook and the hitchhiker for like 2 years. What the fuck's going on? He's visibly distressed.
Yes.
And it's like, well, yeah, you can imagine this guy's obviously like, he's not all there. And he hasn't got a clue what's going on. And he's actually like really upset by just malleting all these young kids to death in the space of like 2 hours.
Yeah, I know.
And obviously you get a scene of him licking the teeth and it's like, oh man, oh God.
Yeah, you're in trouble. You don't actually see his actual face, but you know that something's amiss because he's got a couple of, well, I mean, his teeth are all over the place. I mean,
his teeth are all over the place. Yeah.
There's one up here, there's one down there. But I mean,
yeah,
he. But I think that's another thing, isn't it? The Leatherface character, he doesn't ever speak, but through his mannerisms and his distress that he displays in this scene and his touching of his face and things, he does communicate a lot. You know, he's the most aggressive character by an absolute mile. He's the most violent. But at the same time, you almost get the sense that he's also like the most vulnerable because he's terrified. He's as terrified of these kids as they are of him. But obviously, he just his fear manifests.
If anything, he's more terrified because the kids don't even get a chance to see what's going on.
I mean, Jerry does, and he absolutely soils himself. Apparently, so the kids didn't ever see what Gunnar Hansen's, the Leatherface character, was going to look like. He was kept from them so that whenever they actually came face to face, they would genuinely be terrified. And apparently, with Jerry, when he walked in and Leatherface was scheduled to, come running through whenever old Thingy came out the freezer, and apparently the first take they did where Jerry saw Leatherface for the first time running in, he soiled himself so heavily that he actually ran out of the room and spoiled the shot. So they had to do it again. They were like, okay, right, you kind of know what's going to take place here, Jerry, right? And they got it, on the second take. But the first time, he was so terrified by Gunnar Hansen scoobering in.
Just saw those teeth and he was like, no, not for me.
Oh, man.
I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good scene, that. Really good.
It's really effective, I think, just him having his like moment at the window when he's like, he's visibly distressed. And it's like, God, what are we dealing with?
I know. And it's all during daylight as well. I mean, bear in mind, all of this is happening during the day.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is that I think that adds to it as well. That scene, again, another iconic scene when he gets Pam, when she's running out the door. The fact that it's in daylight, it's like, oh God, because you hear that, don't you? All of these, horrible things happen and these deplorable acts that people do to other people and other human beings. And there's the phrase where you hear, and also this all happened in broad daylight. Like, it's just unbelievable. Like, can you believe it? This stuff's happening in broad daylight. It's just the idea that, I know this house is in, back end of Texas, in the middle of nowhere. They're not next to like a freeway, but it's just the idea that this is just happening at like, lunchtime.
Yeah, I know.
Pam's running off and Leatherface is picking her up and putting her on the hook at where people are having like their lunchtime, salads.
Well, people are sitting in the office. Meanwhile, back out in Houston, you got Leatherface just dragging young girls into the house, from the porch,
popping them on a hook.
But it is an iconic scene where he grabs her and her legs are flapping around all over the place, and he's dragging her in. I mean, it's well shot and it's raw.
He's huge, isn't he? Gunnar Hansen was
he's massive. Yeah, he's huge. Yeah, he's massive,
humongous,
bloke,
which just adds to it, doesn't it? You just got this like, because you look at it and think, well, to be fair, if old Leather's getting me, well, I'm not doing much better than Pam. I'll get him put on the hook next to her.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we should also just quickly say, the amount of work that went into creating, I think whenever Pam goes in, before she gets hooked, she walks in to try to look for Kurt, and she falls into the living room where all of these ornaments are set up, and there's the production designer on this, designed all of these things from scratch using, sort of a mix of fake and real bones. And there's a good sort of 30-second segment where it's just shots of these various ornaments that these guys have got in the living room. Like they've got a bench where it's just sort of, you've just got bones kind of like lining the top of it and arms coming down, sitting on the armrest. Quite good. Some of those. I mean, it's a huge amount of effort in there.
Well, mate, you should have been at the Universal Studios in America, in LA. The horror house. I was walking through that goodness.
Oh yeah,
yeah, really spooky. Yeah, really got me.
Was that the original stuff?
I doubt it.
No,
it was just a pop-up horror house.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure it looked okay. I think by this point it was like midnight, and I was like, okay,
yeah, you signed up.
I've had enough of these horror houses.
Yeah.
Christ. There was a bloke in the corner who was playing Gramps, and then he just started flailing his arms in the air. It was like, oh man, that's not Gramps, is it? That's not Grandpa. That's not what he was doing in the film. Like, oh dear.
No, he doesn't. He can't move.
Yeah. So sorry, what is the setup with Grandpa? He's like desiccated. He's all dried up. There's no moisture going on.
Well, he's turned into basically just like a wax candle, and he's
Is that possible? Are we getting that with people?
No. Well, I mean, it's like no, because he then kind of comes alive whenever he drinks blood. Well, yeah. I mean, it's all a bit ridiculous, but like,
it's a bit much.
I would say that whenever she goes up, whenever Sally is being chased by, well, should we maybe get there just quickly? I mean, I don't think we've got that much to talk about. I mean, Franklin obviously gets done in the woods. Quite an effective scene where Leatherface just comes out of nowhere, and then you get this chase that goes on between Sally and Leatherface.
He can move as well, Gunnar. He's pretty swift, that guy.
Well, can it? Well, the thing is, but I do feel like this would have been a shorter film if any of the cast could actually run properly. I mean, Sally's running in this is extraordinary. every step she takes forward, she's doing about 2 side steps. Her arms are going all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, yeah, I guess that's maybe one of the few things that you just have to accept.
You have to accept.
I said about the characters, and I feel like they're not your conventional horror dummies because they're not really allowed to.
No.
Most of it makes sense because it's so quick. It's like, well, to be fair, what were they supposed to do in that situation?
Yeah, agreed.
No, but I think it makes it more jarring, as I said, because I think old Leatherface, he moves. He can shift arse, that guy.
Yeah, he can, yeah.
Old Toby should have gone, like, Gunner, we have to just slow this down a bit because you're making Sally look like a bloody fucking idiot. Like she's stuck in the mud over there.
Yeah.
Slow that down a little bit. And you have got this chainsaw as well, so that should be weighing you down. But maybe that's what makes it look a bit more jarring because he's moving and she's just screaming. And as you said, sidestepping, 2 steps back, 1 step forward.
Oh, she's all over I mean, she's doing like spins. She's like, bloody cartwheeling around. And I mean, whenever we get a chase at the end with with the hitchhiker, I mean, I don't know what the hell he's doing. Because, I mean, he's there just... I mean, it looks like he's like dancing. I mean, it's extraordinary. What's he doing?
I'm assuming that's more like he's taunting, isn't it? Like he's like,
yeah, he's taunting.
I can accept that a bit more because he's taunting and he could have grabbed her 20 feet back.
Okay.
The ending is just bonkers, isn't it? It's just bonkers. Like the whole setup is just insane.
Well, should we quickly say so?
You want to talk about Grandpa?
Yeah. So whenever Sally actually runs into the house, is the first place she goes for a bit of protection. Obviously horrendous. But she runs up the stairs and she sees the granny and grandpa sitting up in the attic, who she looks for help. I mean, I don't know what on earth she expects to get from the 2 wax candles there, but the grandma's obviously completely gone. I mean, she's absolute toast, and the grandpa's just sitting there. He doesn't really do anything. But I mean, it's very Psycho-esque, isn't it? It very much is. The final reveal in Psycho. It's very much sort of harping back to that, and it's effective. That's kind of all I was going to say. I was going to say, the influence from the Psycho, all the taxidermy, the image of the rotting old bodies, that's Psycho, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. By this point, it's like, well, it's just trying to find anyone, isn't it? It's just trying to find anyone that isn't Leatherface. And you see 2 people that are sitting upstairs. You're like, well, I'm guessing these are humans. They're alive. But then at the same time, it's like, well, you're running back into Leatherface's house.
Well, exactly, yeah.
So,
yeah. But I guess she doesn't know that it's his house.
Oh no, she doesn't. She knows she's not been there yet.
She just thinks that. She just thinks, oh, this is the house. This guy's
the nearest house. Yeah,
a rogue in the woods. So, the cook. Then she goes finds some protection from the cook, who again proves himself to be another totally unhinged character. Because on one level, whenever the kids first meet the cook who works at the gas station, he actually tries to warn them against going to see their granddad's house. And he says, look, people around here, they don't like, trespassers on their land, and those young girls don't want to be going there. He gives them all the warnings. And then here he appears to be comforting Sally, but then comes back in with rope, ties her up. And then throughout the rest of the film, it flicks between comforting her, but then getting kind of swept up in the torture element.
Well, yeah, because he keeps saying, like, the violence isn't for me, I've got nothing to do with this. And then
take no pleasure from killing.
The hitchhiker's like, oh, he's just the cook, just ignore him. Well, I don't like the violence and stuff, I'm going to probably just shoot off here.
And then he gets carried away.
Are we supposed to sort of see this character and see him as like he's this conflicted guy who's like, oh, really deep down he doesn't want to do this, but this is what's happening. This is what the family's been driven to.
No, I think he's twisted.
As they're his family, he's going to help them. He doesn't want to be included, but he is. He can't help it.
Well, no, because he's the most like, of all of them, he's the only one who seems, relatively sort of intellectually on some kind of like sensible level that he could actually rationalise what he's doing.
Well, he drops them off, doesn't he? Leather hitchhiker, there you go, enjoy. Have some of that. You have that scene as well, don't you, before he ties up old Sally and brings her back to the house. The camera lingering on the door, waiting for Leather to come in. You think, oh, maybe this guy's her salvation. And then he just reverses in slowly. And just got that, like, grotesque look on his face. I think he comes out with a rope in his hand. You're like, oh, dear. Oh, God. I've got a feeling this guy's in cahoots with old Leatherface.
He's the one who should probably have the most responsibility in this, and he gets totally swept up in it. And he goes, and I guess in that dinner scene that we've talked about already, which is we'll just talk about the dinner scene quickly, because it's a climax to the film, and it really is, that is, however long it lasts, say, 4 minutes, that is just pure just madness in that scene. That is what you're seeing. The way it's cuts between Sally, her eye, it zooms in on her eyeball, zooms in on everyone's sweaty faces, zooms in on the hitchhiker doing all this kind of taunting stuff. Leatherface with the bloody, at this point, he's got the transvestites get up on. You've got the cook who goes between sort of feeling, withdrawing from it, but then getting carried away and like laughing.
Start like, jumping, like remorseful. He's like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and then, yeah. And we've got the lampshade that's made out, so you've got this lamp bulb that's hanging down over the table that's made of a human face.
You've got Grandpa there just exploding.
Grandpa there
just with the fucking mud pat on his
melting, face. Absolutely. It really is a scene of absolute insanity.
Yeah.
And it's so effective.
I like the masks that Leather's got. How, we've said about his personality and how he's potentially the most vulnerable, but when whatever mask he's got on, his then personality then shifts to represent whatever he's got on. So when he first comes back, he's got the wig on. He's like quivering.
He actually like raises his voice.
He changes the voice.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he's like high pitched. Yeah. And then it's like he gets dressed up for dinner.
And he also starts taking interest in like Sally's hair. Like when he goes up to her, he's like looking her right in the face, and she's obviously like, ooh, and he starts like looking at her hair. Like he takes an interest in her hair. Like, everyone in there. It's not just, okay, guys, just do something crazy and we'll film it and we'll do like fast cuts. Everyone has got. Each member of the family has their own motivations. The hitchhiker's just a full blown sadist. The cook is a maniac who's conflicted. One minute he's withdrawing, the next minute he's getting involved. Leatherface is there just clueless, going, taking an interest almost in and not understanding how to process the emotions. And then Sally's obviously just absolutely beside herself. She's sleep deprived, boiling hot, sweating. Grandpa's, God knows what he's doing in the corner, but he's just sitting there, and he's just dying.
Well, it's just the fact they then get him to like, Grandpa wants some fun.
Yeah, he was a killer. He was a killer, and all that.
Just watching like her just with the head in the bucket, watching this desiccated like wax candle.
Yeah.
Trying to finish her off. What are we watching?
I know. And then and obviously she escapes, she goes down, she manages to stop a lorry, and the guy who's driving the lorry gets out to help her in, sees Leatherface and goes, oh man. And then he just and so he leaves this lorry. They realise, God, I'm not going to be able to turn the keys on in time here. So they both get out the lorry, and Sally and this guy go running down the road. Another pickup truck comes. Sally gets in the pickup truck. The guy in the lorry just runs off. He just disappears from camera.
I know he turns up.
Oh, yeah.
But for some reason, I forgot what he did. He spanners old Leatherface and then just runs down the road.
And then just runs off.
He's a heavy-set bloke. He's a big guy.
He just runs down the road.
Well, again, it's all part of the frenetic bonkers ending, is it? Because it's just like, well, maybe, yeah. If you can't get the truck started in time and you see this guy Leatherface with a chainsaw,
maybe that's what you do.
You're just like, well, I'm just going to run down the road and just hope for the best.
Well, he then, you then just get, the sort of quite an iconic scene is the kind of Leatherface dance at the end in the sun, in the sunrise, I guess, at this point. And again, this like celebration, well, it's not a celebration, it's a dance out of frustration, I guess, in some ways. But like, ultimately, the two take-homes is Leatherface is still alive. They're all still alive. Oh, no, with the exception of the hitchhiker.
The hitchhiker's been splattered, yeah.
He's been splattered. But Leatherface and the family are still going. He's still got his chainsaw, and it's a sunrise. This dance is to the sunrise. How often would you see the final close of a film celebrating the victory of the evil in the sunrise?
Yeah, it just cuts to black. Sally gets away, but she doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, it's borderline perfection, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
that's what it is. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it is
iconic.
Well, it couldn't be. But for what it is perfect. There's nothing. You look at it now. It's however many years down the line we are, almost 50 years, and it's a perfect film. It's a fantastic horror film. It's top 5 horror films ever made. No doubt.
Yeah, no question. Yeah. Tobe Hooper. Yeah. Thanks very much. You created something pretty goddamn special there. Gunnar Hansen, of course. As Leatherface.
It is a masterpiece.
Truly memorable.
I don't really know what else to say. You just need. If you haven't seen it already, you need to watch it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. No, I think that's. Yeah. Again, I guess similar to other films, in some ways, it's a shame that we could have just left it there. I understand when things become successful, obviously sequels follow, and sometimes, some sequels can be kind of interesting, but
you just don't want to see it, do you?
You don't want to do anything with this.
Where do you go from that?
Well, you don't.
I don't really care about Leather's backstory. I couldn't give a shit.
No. It totally takes away from the thing. But yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Until next time.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
Right, so for fucking October, Ben wants to do 31 days, 31 films in the 31 days.
No, forget about that. Just where they can find us.
Oh, right, okay. You can find us on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, and on TikTok, but Ben doesn't do TikTok because he doesn't like it.
Need kids. Want children. Children apply.
He also does the game vloggers, but we don't do that because
we might do.
We won't.
We're gonna go back on Overcooked because Overcooked has the Halloween DLC. We're gonna use that. It's gonna be really fun.
And if you like what you hear, don't forget to like, share, and tell a friend. And don't forget to send in your 15-second reviews.
Oh, God.
Thanks.
How am I going to fucking fit those in? Good pods, Podchaser.
Oh, yeah, on those things.
Apple Podcast reviews.
Yep, Spotify.
Sopranos Redefined.
Oh, yeah.
That's out.
Ooh.
That's another thing I'm doing.
How's that going?
Well, it's okay, yeah.
Good.
It's not on Apple yet. Well, hopefully by the time this comes out in October, it will be. So, go and have a look at it. If you like Sopranos, have a look.
Right.
If you like Dan Mackles, Christ, poor you, have a listen.
What about if you like Ben?
Well, then you're in for a fucking treat.
If you don't like Ben. Is he a waffler in this?
If you like Sopranos, just have a look.
Are you a waffler in it?
Yeah, probably.
Hello and welcome to What's Our Seat Number. If you're listening to this trailer, you're deciding whether or not you're going to listen to this podcast.
Good.
But chances are we've lost you already.
Wait, what? No, come on now. What?
Well, I mean, it takes what, like 10 seconds for people
You're
to lose
being
interest in things?
defeatist.
I am
You're
not
being
being
defeatist.
defeatist. They've
You
gone
are.
already. It's for now.
Then, well, now they are because we started arguing, so we've both sort of driven them out.
Well, go
Right,
on
just
then.
go on to
Tell the dead air who we are.
Okay, the dead air,
The dead air.
the cadaver.
The people who aren't listening anymore.
I'm taking control. You introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing, right? It's going to sound more professional that way. Go.
Okay. I'm Johnny Gross. I'm a filmmaker and a film fan and fanatic and obsessive.
Good. Very good. That was very well done. Very professional. You sounded like you're in control and almost like you know who you are.
All right then, and who are you?
I'm Sai. I'm a 3D artist and a game designer, a film fan. I'm your brother as well.
Really?
We're going to be talking about some of our favourite movies and hopefully some of yours as well. There's going to be trivia behind the scenes.
Do you want to tell the listeners why we've called this podcast What's Our Seat Number?
You really came to the right person with fielding this question because I feel that I can take this story and really bring it to life. Okay, so one time we went to go and see a film in the cinema and I asked, what's our seat number?
Fantastic.
Was it good?
Yeah.
I did it for you.
It's great.
If you want to hear more, you can check out the rest of our episodes. We're hosted by Podbean, but you can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music or Audible, TuneIn, Alexa, Listen Notes, and now on iHeartRadio, Player FM, and Podchaser. So pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. Please don't forget to review, like, and rate, and keep listening, because the more you listen, the more we'll be able to produce. Bye.
Ta-ta.